Hi everyone, Mike McConville here again for String Tech Workstations, Stratford, Ontario, Canada. We have a couple of iconic Gibsons in. These guitars are iconic for different reasons. First of all, we have Brandon's 1959 VOS Les Paul Standard, which is pretty well the most valuable Gibson guitar of all time. Not this one in particular, but the real deal, 1958. VOS is vintage on spec, so they've basically duplicated the original 1958 Gibson Les Paul Standard when they built this guitar. It's got the aluminum tailpiece, and it's prematurely aged. Now, these pickups were swapped out. These were ordered from England, and this particular set was designed to be installed open-faced. Like you saw in the other video, they were swapped out. The other thing is, of course, we've got a compensated nut, so now it tunes perfectly. These prematurely aged Grover Rotomatics were installed as well. There was a bit of scratching on the headstock, and Darcy basically blew that in and rubbed it out. The original 1958 Les Paul Standard is the most desirable Gibson of all time, and this, like I said, is a vintage on spec. So it's basically a replica of that 59. So it's a CS9 is the model. And what we have here, many would consider, certainly those in the jazz world, this is the most iconic of all archtop guitars. Because under the guidance of Lloyd Loehr, when he came on board after Orville Gibson was basically put to pasture, he was the first guy to actually put F-holes into the top of a guitar. So in other words, this was the very first model of guitar in the world to be built in the fashion of a cello, with a carved arch top, carved arched back, and F-holes in the soundboard. That's a pretty significant contribution. This particular model is in 1929. The original foot of the bridge is there. We have three other bridge caps that we can kind of play with to line up the intonation perfectly on this. We got the original tailpiece. It's in pretty remarkable shape for 1929. It has had some previous work done, some work executed very well, and some other jobs that were not executed quite so well. This piece obviously was replaced. It fell out at some point. We have enough material to redo the fingerboard completely so that we have uniformity, and I think that's probably the route we're going to go. This will also be getting a complete refret. These frets are pretty well fried. Amazing that they're still in there from 1929. There are a few places around the binding where the plastic is kind of loose and letting go. Other than the complete refret setup and then an intonated bridge cap, there's a multitude of other little things that we're going to take care of as we move along with this guitar. And as always, on the Patreon channel, you'll be getting a play-by-play on this whole job, A to Z. Before we loosen the strings and pull the bridge off in preparation for that refret, and we're marking the footprint of the bridge on both sides. As is very common with these early archtops, you can see the sort of crash marks of that tailpiece. This is actually a fairly heavy brass bar, but we're going to, again, with very, very low-tack painter's tape, we're just going to kind of hold that in place while we remove the frets. Well, my customer just emailed back and he agrees completely. Look at this. This is just flapping in there. This one is horrible looking. Somebody put that in. It has nothing to do with the original inlay. This one's loose. This one's loose. We're removing the frets, truing up the fingerboard. Why not completely do the inlay? Then we'll get a nice consistent color end to end. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Well, I'm down to the last fret. Most of those frets came out pretty clean, but before I pull this last fret, I just wanted to point out all this crumbling and breakage. That's from the last guy. So there are really only two places that were kind of bad here. Obviously, this inlay, you can tell by how easy it came out that it's been in and out of the guitar a few times. Now, this will need to be filled with ebony dust. So just want to show you that before I pull that last fret out. And the rest of the inlay is going in nice and crisp, cleaning out those cavities, getting a nice crisp piece of new inlay. After talking with Denny, we decided, the easiest thing and the cleanest is to replace all of these inlays so that we have a nice uniform consistency along the length of the neck when we're done. So after those inlays are filled and glued in, we'll let that sit for a day or so, and then we'll be able to come back and clean up the fingerboard and open up those fret slots for the new frets. And there were actually a few places on this guitar where there was loose binding along the edge of the fingerboard and around the body. So there's a bunch of spots that need to be taken care of. I'm going to do all of the gluing completely 100% before I even start on the frets.